In this video, I'm going to be talking about validity in a scientific experiment. Okay, so in an experiment, we want to have what's called fair tests. Okay, a fair test just means that you are changing one thing and you are testing one thing. Okay, so that means you have one independent variable and one dependent variable. Now, what that means is then everything else in your experiment has to be controlled. Everything else has to be kept the same. If it's not kept the same, then it's possible that it influences your results. Okay, because if multiple things are influencing your result, you don't have a fair test, right? You should only have one thing influencing your result, the independent variable. If you have multiple things influencing your result, that's a problem. Okay, that is a problem. So in an experiment, it's invalid if it isn't a fair test. And what does that actually mean? What it actually means is you are testing something completely different to what you originally thought. Okay, maybe I thought I was testing the type of liquid, but if I didn't control the amount of those liquids I used, well, in reality, I'm actually testing the type and amount of liquid. That's two different things that could be affecting my results. I'm not actually testing what I thought I was testing. It is an invalid test, okay? The results are going to be invalid because it wasn't answering the question that I wanted it to answer. So how do we ensure that an experiment is valid? You need to control all the other variables that are not your independent or dependent variable. Okay, everything else has to be controlled. So what might be the issues in this experiment? Right, what might be the issues in this experiment? Well, as I said before, maybe the amount of liquid isn't being controlled. Okay. What else? I mean, they've said that the sunlight is the same and the temperature is the same, but how do we know from these images that it is? Maybe the plants could have been placed where some are in more shade than others. Okay. What else could be a problem? Right? We've got the same measuring, we've got the same measuring stick, but maybe the measuring stick actually starts to rot. And because if it's a wooden stick, right, wood rots, and so maybe the measuring stick is actually rotting and influencing the results. Right? Maybe, in other words, maybe the ruler actually sunk down in the ground a little too much. Maybe it was moved over at an angle. Okay. Do I have it at the same angle every time? There are so many different types of variables that need to be controlled. Okay, maybe if I did this experiment multiple times, was the weather the same every time I did the experiment? Maybe it wasn't. So the weather might have been different between trials. Okay, unless you went and got a whole bunch of pots and a whole bunch of plants and did it all at once, maybe the weather was different between trials. Okay, so at the end of the day, validity is all about the controlled variables. Have you controlled everything that you can? And do you have one independent variable and one dependent variable? If you do have one of each, and then you've controlled everything else, well, then you have a valid experiment.